Disappointing, that's how it is. Sonic Racing Crossworlds. To be honest, I think it'd be pretty reasonable to say that it's one of those cases of a game that not only do I not enjoy at all, but also that I feel very highly confused by its very positive reception. If I'm being honest, I feel like I'm in a parallel universe compared to the vast majority of people online, Sonic fans in particular, let's not kid ourselves. As a Mario Kart competitive player, in particular Mario Kart 8 Deluxe and World, with 3,000 hours spent in the first one, Sonic Racing Cross was a pretty disappointing game to me, and pretty mediocre, not at all deserving of a 9 out of 10 by IGN, or the very high user review score that the game is receiving on Metacritic. What makes it even more surprising, at least to me personally, is that a lot of fans of the game would seem to think that Sonic Racing Crossworlds is a lot better than Mario Kart World, game which, without exaggerating, I consider one of my favorite games. So yeah, in this video I'd like to give you my perspective on Sonic Racing Crossworlds and Mario Kart World. Consider this a comparative review. Before starting, I think it's important to clarify for those Sonic fans that might need it, that when making this video I'm not trying to say that your opinion on Sonic Racing Crossworlds or Mario Kart World are invalid. I like to make it abundantly clear that as long as an opinion is based on factual information about the game, its game mechanics, I think it's excellent that people come to different conclusions on those same facts. It's all subjective after all. What I like to do with this video is offer my own perspective, and while I'm at it, talk a little bit about the ways in which Sonic fans talk about the Crossworlds vs. World situation. It's completely valid if you love Sonic Racing Crossworlds and you don't like Mario Kart World. I just like to offer you with a different perspective on both games. Sonic Racing Crossworlds, as I said at the start of the video, feels pretty disappointing to me, mainly because, and this might make a lot of fans of the game angry at me, it honestly feels like it's a simple copy of the Mario Kart games but with Sonic slapped on top. I'd like to clarify that when I say copy, I don't mean it in a pejorative sense, but a descriptive one. It's not the same to not like the game because I consider it a Mario Kart clone, and to call the game a copy as an insult because I didn't like it. Some of you might tell me that just because it's the same genre as Mario Kart, that doesn't mean necessarily that it's a Mario Kart clone. However, I feel like this logic is one that deeply lacks imagination. The genre of Crossworlds, Mario Kart, Sonic R, Sonic Riders, Crash Team Racing, etc. is a mascot racer. And a mascot racer doesn't have to specifically be like Mario Kart to truly be a mascot racer. It doesn't have to have all the characters and vehicles while they use items. That's just the way Mario Kart did it. Sonic used to have mascot racers that were distinct from Mario Kart and were unique. Specifically the games that I mentioned earlier, Sonic R and Sonic Riders. And while it's true that these games are not for everyone, even if I do love Sonic R, I think Crossworlds perfectly could have been a game that isn't like Mario Kart, but instead offers a completely unique experience from it that only Sonic can offer. But the worst part is that I don't consider the existing game bad necessarily. I just consider it that, mediocre. Not only because it doesn't offer me anything I can't get out of any other AAA kart racer, but also because the game itself isn't really that fun to me. A question that I would constantly ask myself while playing this game was exactly what reason do I have to play this over Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, Mario Kart World, or the previous Sonic racing games? Because here's the thing, the game's mechanics are extremely basic, even more basic than Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, although I don't think Mario Kart 8 Deluxe is as basic of a game as many people would like you to believe. In fact, Crossworlds simplifies a lot of mechanics from previous Sonic racing games and makes them even more basic, possibly in an attempt to make the game even more like Mario Kart. This is something that I feel warrants mentioning, because while I'm not that big on Sonic and Sega All-Stars Racing, Sonic and All-Stars Racing Transformed, or Team Sonic Racing, I think these games offered things that separated them enough from Mario Kart to justify their existence, despite already being derivative from it. Transformed introduced the mechanic of charging mini-turbos through more than one drift, on top of the stunts with the right analog stick, that not only give the player more speed when landing, but also on top of that help the player position themselves in the air to choose where they want to land. Not to mention that if you started a stunt too late, you wouldn't receive your speed burst. Team Sonic Racing, despite all of its problems, introduced cooperative play through these golden paths, which would have been pretty fun to play with friends if the game had only had crossplay. Crossworlds not only simplifies the trick system so it no longer moves the position of your vehicle in the air and doesn't punish you for starting a trick too late, making it funnily enough a lot more similar to Mario Kart, but also the cooperative play as seen specifically in Team Sonic Racing with its golden paths and sharing items with other players is also missing. And the game just simply does not have any addition that separates itself substantially from previous Sonic Racing games or Mario Kart. But even if they had brought back these things, I don't know if offering a combination of the previous games' mechanics would have been something that would make this game particularly enticing. Now, to be fair, Crossworlds does add things to try to distinguish itself from other mascot racers and previous Sonic Racing games. However, the key is in the word try. The extreme gear are one of the additions to the game, for example, with the boost style, but these play too much like karts in my opinion, and it's not the type of innovation that these types of games need to separate themselves from the competition. If you want it to be favorable to Crossworlds, you can say the difference between the extreme gears and karts is the same difference as inside drifting bikes and the karts from Mario Kart Wii, but this comparison would be, honestly, too favorable in my opinion. Another one of the additions to the game is the gadget system. This addition is a little bit more interesting, but it also doesn't do enough to supplement the lack of unique game mechanics. The gadgets are little tools that the player can use that most of the time give your vehicle, or in general the player, static statistic buffs, like charging mini turbos of specific levels faster, receive items of any type more frequently, and many more. However, aside from the fact that the gadgets are interesting to experiment outside of races and to think which would be your best personal loadout, the gadgets never offer any type of substantial active improvements. Only some of them do, like this gadget that makes it so you gain speed by bumping on other players. Rather, the gadgets, as I said, are mostly passive improvements, not active ones, meaning that they don't add the game mechanics to the game or substantially change the way that you play it, which is already a simplified version of Sonic Racing to resemble Mario Kart. But while it's true that the passive gadgets do allow the player to do things like snaking, and some of the active gadgets add some neat game mechanics like swapping first and second items, there's never something as substantial as being able to do stunts and move your position in the air, make charge jumps and ride on walls, or add more involved trick system to the extreme gears. Did they expect something like that? No. That would have been extremely unbalanced. But because the active gadgets have to be gadgets, they can never be a game mechanic as interesting as the ones of old that would carry an entire game. And for that matter, because of their optional nature, they can never design courses around a specific mechanic offered by a gadget, since players not using said gadget would be at a huge disadvantage. In the making of this video, I've been told that a lot of passive gadgets are a lot more interesting than I give them credit for, like for example how the speed item gadgets take up more slots than the other item gadgets because it facilitates strategies like bagging, or how passive gadgets like the mini turbo gadgets allowed the player to do snaking as mentioned earlier. However, I still take issue with these, because while it's true that depending on how the player wants to play there may be a lot of different gadget combinations to experiment with, these specific examples are literally things you can do in almost any kart racer with an item and mini turbo system. This is the problem with the gadget system. While an interesting concept and allowing the player to choose how they play, it can't and shouldn't have been a replacement for the game having its own unique driving mechanics to make it stand out from other Sonic Racing games or Mario Kart. It's a cool addition, but it should have been a companion to a new more substantial mechanic to the game, not its main attraction. I'd like to make it clear again that there's nothing wrong with making your game similar to Mario Kart as long as it's good at doing that. While the question here is why the decisions that the designers of this game took would seem to be in favor of making the game even more like Mario Kart than previous Sonic Racing games, when they were already pretty derivative while still having their own identity. This is something that can be seen in the game's track selection, or things like the inclusion of Mario Kart style double item boxes to the game. All of these decisions that they took would seem to be specifically to make the game similar to Mario Kart 8 Deluxe in particular. Tracks like Chow Park, also known as Baby Park, Colorful Mall, which is literally Coconut Mall from the Booster Course Pass, E-Stadium, which reminds a lot of Mario Kart Stadium, Aqua Forest, literally being Wild Woods, I could go on. And look, I like Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, as you could probably tell already, but I hope you can understand why I don't like Crossworlds. Not only because it tries to be too much like Mario Kart at the expense of offering a unique experience, but also because on top of that, mechanically, it's not really a very unique kart racer. The fact that it's trying to copy Mario Kart, badly might I add, as we'll get into soon, at the expense of being its own thing, is not really a good thing. In fact, some of the bigger problems that the game has come from the fact that it's not trying to be like what Mario Kart actually is, but rather what the casual understanding of what Mario Kart is: racing Mario Party. While it's true that playing online there were various instances that the game rewarded me for using my items intelligently and saving them for the right moment, the game is highly chaotic, and the item balancing is very poor. And listen, I'm the last person who will call this type of game unbalanced just because I had a couple of bad experiences with items. I'm fully aware that with games like these, people blame their item management mistakes on bad luck and write them off as having no skill involved. But the truth is, games like Mario Kart and its contemporaries, aside from driving knowledge, do require skill. They require the player to know how to utilize their items, to have the game sense of what's their situation in a race, and what strategy to take in the moment. They require to not only use your items passively, but also to think why and how you're doing so. However, Crossworlds, while it does have those rare moments in which it rewards you for strategic play and making the most out of your situation, due to its chaotic nature, it's even more common than Mario Kart that something that's completely out of your control happens. I can understand why someone would like this type of game if you think that mascot racers shouldn't be anything more than just party games, and you don't care about competitiveness or balance. As many people told me in the Spanish version of this video's comments, that is why a lot of people really enjoy it, and it is a completely valid reason to enjoy the game. But I hope you can understand why personally I don't find it as enticing. I hope you can understand that a reason why someone might enjoy a game can be another person's deal breaker, and that's completely fine. Again, I personally don't like Crossworlds. I feel like it's a mediocre racing game, a game that tries to be everything, and therefore it's not excellent in any particular category. It wants to desperately be like Mario Kart despite the fact that it doesn't understand why Mario Kart is so great to begin with. So as a Mario Kart game, it doesn't really do it for me. But that wouldn't be a problem if it also wasn't bad at being a Sonic racing game. Because in its desperation to be like Mario Kart, they removed many of the elements that made Sonic mascot racers distinct from Mario's, even the ones which already resembled them. While they brought back the extreme gears, these do not play the same way as their game of origin, where they offer the gameplay style completely different from Mario Kart. Do I enjoy Crossworlds? In a superficial sort of way, yes. But it's not because of any substantial additions that it makes to the game that's separated from other mascot racers, or as anything new to iterate on the formula. I enjoyed superficially in the same way that a toddler enjoys having keys wrangled in front of them. Given this perspective, you might now understand why I find it so confusing when I saw many people tell me that Crossworlds is apparently way better than Mario Kart World. Mario Kart World is a game which I've been playing this last month, and I do have some critiques toward it, but similarly to the situation with Sonic Racing Crossworlds, I feel like I'm in a parallel universe to many people discussing the game online. The consensus around Mario Kart World seems to be that it's a boring game, that the intermissions are boring, and according to some videos online, that the entire game is as boring as driving to work. However, I have some problems with these types of videos. I'm not the most experienced Mario Kart World player, and I don't pretend to be, but I am someone who is learning the competitive ways of the game in the same way that I did with 8 Deluxe. And guys, Mario Kart World is one of the most mechanically rich kart racers I've ever played? Mario Kart World is, as I said, one of my favorite games, and there's a reason. This game is incredible. It's mechanically super fun, it innovates on the kart racing genre in incredible ways. It's without a doubt a game which I'll be playing for hours and hours, possibly just as much as what I did with Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, possibly more. I must say that I think it's quite ridiculous some of the critiques that people have levied against Mario Kart World. And in fact, it reminds me of some of the same bad faith arguments that Sonic fans have had to fight against for years, like boost to win. When you deliberately go out of your way to play intermissions, and not only that, but decide to not utilize the mechanics that the game offers even in the 3-lap tracks, is it really the fault of the game that you find it boring? I feel like it's the same bad faith argument made against Sonic Boost games like Unleashed and Generations, because both are precisely avoiding interaction with the game's mechanics and complaining later when you find it boring. In the case of Mario Kart World, driving in the most straightforward way possible, and in the case of the Boost games, playing in such a way where you try to, at all costs, not interact with the game in front of you while purposely holding down the same button. I don't think Mario Kart World is a perfect game or anything like that. It definitely deserves to be criticized that the intermission tracks are a really big part of the main online mode's experience. But unlike Sonic fans, I don't assume that the game is dead online just because worldwides aren't as active as they could be. Mario Kart World's competitive scene is booming. In October, we'll have the first instance of the big tournament that's played in Mario Kart Competitive Play, Mario Kart Universal or MKU, and Mario Kart World already has more than 120 teams registered. The first Mario Kart Universal of Mario Kart 8 Deluxe only had 42 teams according to the official page in Mario Kart Central, of which to sign up to a tournament, each team needs to have minimum 9 registered players. That's not a game with a dead online, it's a game which has a flourishing online scene, even bigger than Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, one of the biggest competitive Mario Kart games there ever was in terms of player count. What's more, while I don't think Nintendo deserves any credit for this, casual players have found a way to play online how they want, with things like the Mario Kart World Discord server, which already has 60,000 members. That way players can choose to play only the 3-lap tracks with friend lobbies. But even if Mario Kart Worlds' online was fully dead, that doesn't remove from the fact that there's a difference between this problem of Mario Kart World and the problems of Sonic Racing Crossworlds. The problems of Crossworlds are fundamental, but the ones of World aren't. The problems of Mario Kart World are problems that don't take away from its mechanical complexity. They're issues that can be solved by patches, since they're not a problem of the actual video game you play, the design of its courses and its game mechanics, but rather the lacking quality of life options that don't let players play how they want. While on the other hand, patches can't solve the problems of Sonic Racing Crossworlds, because that's how the game was designed. The game doesn't need patches as much as it needs surgery. And ironically, as if on cue, while I was making preparations for this video and thinking about this point, Nintendo made a patch for Mario Kart World, mitigating somewhat the issues with worldwides, which shows that they do know about them and are willing to fix them, bringing back some life into the game's main online game mode. Many of you might tell me that Mario Kart World is too expensive of a game compared to Sonic Racing Crossworlds. However, I think what a lot of Sonic fans don't realize is that Crossworlds is almost just as expensive as Mario Kart World, with a difference of only $10 for the base version of the game, unless you buy Crossworlds on Switch 1, which would make it a difference of $20. Look, something I feel I didn't make clear in my original Spanish video is this: I'm not looking to justify Mario Kart Worlds' price. Personally, while I do think $80 for someone like me who is going to play the game for thousands of hours is much more than worth it, I do understand the average person isn't like that, and I do think the game is overpriced. But at the same time, I can't say I'm really much of a fanatic of the idea of upholding the shitty business practices of one multi-billion-dollar company just because a different one you like less is doing something bad too. Nintendo and Sega both have to be held accountable for doing shitty business practices. I don't care which one you consider the lesser evil, they're both doing bad. I'd argue in very similar ways. And I'm here to point out the fact that Sonic fans, and broadly many gamers in general, have pointed to the shitty practices of Nintendo, like raising the price of their games exponentially and not lowering their prices, while not critiquing Sega for doing other terrible practices too. Not only that, but blindly praising them in the process. Things like the Digital Deluxe that Sega offers you for Crossworlds frankly should not exist. Something many people like to omit is the fact that Crossworlds' Digital Deluxe is actually more expensive than Mario Kart World. And I know what you might tell me here. Curious, you don't need to buy Digital Deluxe. That's true. But you know what the issue is? The Digital Deluxe they're offering for this game is the same shitty deal Sega has been doing for all of their recent Sonic releases. Imagine if Sonic Colors Ultimate released and they removed the Planet Wisp remixes and other features of the remaster to sell them back to you as Digital Deluxe. Imagine if Sonic Origins released and they removed the ability to zoom into the islands as well as other features and sold them back to you as Digital Deluxe. Now imagine if Sega made crossover characters for their brand new racing game, which is what people are most interested in about the game, and didn't sell them to you in the base game, but rather removed them, including exclusive tracks, as Digital Deluxe. Except, you don't need to imagine any of that, because it all happened. And while this is based on my subjective experience with it at the end of the day, I do think even $60 for Crossworlds would be too much. Given the amount of content that it has, 27 3-lap tracks and 15 Crossworlds, counting the Digital Deluxe, and the quality of said tracks as well as the overall gameplay experience, I think I'd personally only really ever be okay with this game if I had paid $40 for it, not $60, much less $70. Again, this isn't to justify Nintendo's practices, but rather to try to show that upholding Sega as the beacon of pro-consumer practices that many people want them to be is frankly irresponsible in my opinion. Especially because Mario Kart World might be $80 when it should be $60, and it's true that that's unnecessarily expensive, but at least it's sold honestly and without putting extra content that was already made before the game even launched behind a paywall. I'm sorry if this video might have been pointed to those fans of Crossworlds watching it, but I hope you can understand that like all of my videos, this is just my personal perspective, and I don't pretend it to be anything more. I suppose if I had to close this video with some final thoughts, it'd be this: don't consume commercial art uncritically. I can say everything I said about Crossworlds and Mario Kart World because I know what I like and dislike about the game. In that sense, I know why I like Mario Kart World so much, and why Crossworlds doesn't inspire much confidence. And to be clear, thinking critically does not mean agreeing with me. It means thinking why you like or dislike a game. That's to say, not only think that you like a game, but why you like it. I'm a Sonic fan, as strange as it may seem after everything negative I had to say about Crossworlds, but I can say the things I said about it because I think critically about why I felt this way about Crossworlds. The truth is, I think Crossworlds and World are worlds apart. I'm sorry that makes you mad, but that's how I feel. And it's not in small part because Mario Kart World is a game mechanically super complex, super fun, and Crossworlds is sincerely one of the most forgettable kart racers I have ever played. It doesn't innovate in any substantial way, it doesn't have an identity, and that's why I don't feel like I have a reason to play it over games like Sonic R, Sonic Riders, Crash Team Racing, or Mario Kart World. Crossworlds could have been a better game than Mario Kart was in many ways. It could have been a new style of mascot racer. It could have even taken ideas from Sonic R or Riders and executed them better. It could have been the kart racer that's thanks to the established formula they can only get from this game. But how it is right now, Sonic Racing Crossworlds is, to me, highly disappointing, and its problems are too fundamental for me to just let them go. Thanks for watching.